Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. We have breaking news today as Israeli air forces have conducted a decapitation strike against Hezbollah command inside of Beirut, Lebanon, and according to preliminary information, a large amount of commanders have been killed, but Nasrallah may still be at large, as we have not been able to confirm the death of Nasrallah at this point. We'll be going on into the city of Beirut, where we were able to see a large amount of footage of the airstrike, the scene from the ground, and also the rubble cleanup that is already going on at this moment to see if any survivors can be found, and also who was in the wreckage. This first clip here shows us the actual airstrike being conducted by Israel as it happened about 1 hour ago. This airstrike is one of the largest ones we've ever seen occur in the area of the city of Beirut, and the reason why is incredibly important. Inside of the blast radius of these bombs is a command center operated by Hezbollah forces, an Iranian proxy group funded and operated by the Iranian government. This force has been continuing to conduct hostile actions not only against the state of Israel, but against Western interests within the Middle East. The Israeli Air Force has conducted a strike to be able to knock out and eliminate their command abilities. Considering that war is now a certainty, the Israelis want to make sure that their command is completely severed from their ground forces and that a ground invasion would meet very little resistance and would be dealing with an incredibly confused and disoriented enemy on the ground. After the smoke cleared, we were able to see the scene from the ground, and we were able to tell that the command center had been completely leveled. Nearly 6 buildings in the area have been completely demolished or flattened by the explosions, letting us know that the Israelis were conducting strikes at a very precise level to be able to destroy the entire structures of these buildings, bringing all floors down onto the basements and largely destroying anything and anyone inside of these buildings. At the moment, the rubble is currently being cleared as we're seeing footage coming out as it now starts turning into night inside of Beirut, that citizenry are beginning to try and clear the debris, and Hezbollah forces are most likely trying to figure out whose commanders are alive and whose are dead at this moment. We're not entirely sure if Nasrallah is alive or dead at this moment. We have heard Hezbollah come out and make statements stating that Nasrallah is in fact alive and well, but we also heard very similar statements being made about the Iranian president before he was in fact found dead and the helicopter crash was uncovered within northern Iran. This leads us to believe that there is a half and half possibility at this point, until several hours pass, that Nasrallah may in fact have been killed in this airstrike by the Israeli armed forces, and also it may be the case that a large amount of Hezbollah command had also gone up with them, making sure that Hezbollah will pretty much be deprived of any of their military and diplomatic command and leadership leading up to this very critical moment where Israel will most likely be invading the southern area of Lebanon. We were also able to hear from Israeli sources that an F-35I Adir was used in the strike. The F-35I Adir is one of the brand new aircraft of the Israeli Air Force, and I'll be quickly trying to make sure that we get a little bit of a picture here for y'all to be able to see what the Adir looks like. This is one of them. You can actually see that it largely looks like any other F-35A, but the F-35I Adir has some in-house Israeli improvements built into it. One of the few versions of the F-35 that has actually been allowed any kind of custom modifications outside of its factory presets. A very interesting thing about these Israeli aircraft. Not only that, the F-35I Adir can carry a decent amount of air-to-ground ordnance inside of its internal bays, or its internal bomb bays, if you want to call them that, although they can carry air-to-air and air-to-ground weaponry, but it can also carry a large amount of weaponry on its external pylons. We're not exactly sure as to the configuration of this F-35I Adir that did conduct the strike against Hezbollah forces within Beirut, but one thing is for certain, the strike has taken Hezbollah leadership completely by shock and largely by surprise, and it's even led the Iranians to be taken by shock and surprise, as we're starting to hear the usual screamings from Tehran that Iran should go to war with Israel over these strikes on Hezbollah. To read exactly what we posted here on our Twitter, Iranian-backed channels are calling for all-out war on Israel following the massive strike on Hezbollah's headquarters. All red lines have been crossed, and now it's showtime in the Middle East, and we largely do believe that it will be showtime within the Middle Eastern area, as Israel will be conducting offensive operations against Lebanon, and this does appear to be the beginning of decapitation strikes meant to completely sever Hezbollah's ability to actually fight from their fighting forces, really their command leadership from the actual fighters in the field, which is a very important move to make, especially if one is planning on conducting offensive actions against an armed force. To sever them from their leadership would ensure that these forces are wildly confused and not well coordinated, considering that the communication in between all of these frontline fighting units usually goes up the chain of command and then is disseminated from a central commander back down the chain of command to these fighting units. Considering that those commanders may have ceased to exist, it's going to be on these units individually to have the initiative and the leadership and the luck to be able to figure out what every other unit is dealing with, what they're dealing with, and also how to react to the situation that's going on around them. That is much more difficult than it sounds, and that means that Hezbollah forces would largely be met with defeat and most likely being pushed back rapidly by an invading Israeli force. Meanwhile, we were also able to hear that this situation is apparently so serious that Netanyahu has actually canceled his New York City visit and is returning to the Middle East immediately. This is incredibly interesting considering that it is occurring during the Shabbat, that Netanyahu would be returning during this time, but nevertheless it is showing that the severity of the situation is certainly beginning to rise or increase for the large part. We also got a picture here that supposedly shows Netanyahu approving the elimination of Nasrallah and the entire high command of Hezbollah. We're not really sure if this is a recycled picture at this moment or whether this is a picture that was made just today, right before the airstrikes were conducted, but we will be trying to research this picture a little bit more and check the validity of it, as this may end up being a historical picture showing that the beginning of a war in the Middle East was pretty much made by that phone call inside of New York City. Meanwhile, the United States government has also come out and denied any involvement in this strike. To read directly what was said, the United States had no involvement in this operation and did not have advanced warning. The advanced warning that we got was literally only minutes before the strike. The F-35 was already airborne, and it may have already dropped its ordnance by the time the United States government was notified that such a strike was occurring. This statement was made by Sabrina Singh, the Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary, and said during a news conference this Friday. She said the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke today with his Israeli counterpart, Yoav Gallant, most likely about the situation and the rising tensions and inevitable war that will be faced within this region. It is showing that the Israelis are taking a larger initiative than they have in the past outside of U.S. Guidance and counselorship. We are seeing that the Israelis have decided to largely ignore most U.S. requests for ceasefire and also most requests to try and lower this war. While my esophagus collapsed right there, y'all just heard that. But they're trying to completely ignore the United States and conduct offensive actions that they believe are necessary. And these actions are largely necessary. We have seen that since April, hostile tensions have not decreased in this area, no matter the amount of appeasement that has been attempted. And it does seem as though that the Israelis are going to have to continue on their offensive path to be able to destroy the Iranian-backed proxies once and for all, and hopefully bring a temporary peace into this region until these forces are able to build up their size and strength again. Because as long as the Islamic Republic of Iran exists and continues to fund and support the Lebanese forces, well, largely the Hezbollah forces inside of Lebanon and the Hamas forces inside the Gaza Strip, we will see that this never truly ends. It only goes through cycles, rising to a crescendo like it has right now, the Israelis largely destroying their armed forces, and then it disappears into obscurity until about another 10 or 15 years later, much like we're seeing right now. But with that, that is all of the breaking news that we have at this moment. I've got to thank all of y'all once again for watching. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Link in the description below. It helps us to be able to keep these video projects possible and keep them rolling. And I got to give a huge shout out to every single one of y'all who has been supporting us on Patreon, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And so I hope to see you all in the next one, and take care.